What's going on? Raven Ritual 666 back from the dead with another Diablo 4 build guide. Today I'm excited to bring to you what is going to be one of the top meta builds for Sorcerer in Season 9, The Sins of the Horadrim. It is the Burning Hydra. Now Hydra is incredible going into Season 9 because of just how good it is in the early game and how amazing it's going to scale up to Pit 100 and plus. So, Hydra in the past has had some problems that it doesn't really do a good area of effect damage. Like, it's very strong on single target, good for bossing. It can do all Torment 4 content, even in Season 8 and prior. However, it didn't have a unique that really allowed it to shine. So, what we now have is the Ophidian Iris, the new unique amulet that supports Hydra, that for every head it has +3, which we gain through tempers, we can get up to 50 to 100% extra damage per head, which is just absolutely huge. We also have a change to the Serpentine aspect. Previously, the Serpentine aspect just allowed you to have an extra spawn of Hydra, meaning you could have 3 up at a time. Now, Serpentine aspect increases the damage by 0.5 to 1.5x per mana that you have, which means mana stacking is back, so we can put out huge amounts of damage, which is why it scales so well. Now, guys, there's quite a few different variants on how to play this, so I really want to go through in a bit of detail of like what variant's going to work better for you and what is best for you to set up depending on what gear you have. Now, for those that don't know, I am a Diablo partner. The build guide is below on Mobalytics, so if you want to check out like your starter build from level 1 to where you should be at level 60, to what you should be doing for Torment 4 and what build's going to work best for you, check out the build guide below. I've got a full detailed report in there. It helps me to help support you. Again, please like and subscribe. It really does help me to keep bringing out this type of content. You will find me live on Twitch on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. So yeah, let's take a little bit more of a look at some of the pros and cons. So why is this build so good? Well, as Sorcerer, we haven't had a like starter build that's like, you know, straight out the block, straight out the gates. That you can go into Hydra that just takes you to the best endgame build. So it's a really easy transition from what you're going to start with to where you want to be into that endgame and pushing pits and killing Belial and doing all those T4 bosses with absolute ease. So this build for a leveling side is nothing new. For all you weary travelers out there across Sanctuary, you all know that Firewall, Hydra, and Familiar has been like the best leveling build for Sorcerer for many seasons in a row. It's just so cool that you can really take that into a pure Hydra build into the late game. Some people set it up in the PTR with like a crit damage. However, the burning damage over time was a far more effective build. It was probably clearing like 15 to 25 pits higher. So you can see here while I'm leveling, this is just some of the gear that I had while I was pushing through into Penitent mode by like level 30. Like nothing. I used only what drops I had on Season 8. No boss powers because I didn't want to cheat because we didn't know if we're going to get the Horadrim spells. It looks like we are going to get access to the Nightmare Dungeons and the escalating Nightmare Dungeons before Torment 1. So hopefully we will be able to get, you know, some of our Horadrim spells up and running before T1. So the build guide has everything set out in that Mobalytics guide for what you should be using for those basic spells that you get early, through to what you want to push for the end game. So yeah, now that we have the best leveling build that transitions to end game, these interactions with Serpentine and the Ophidian Iris is huge. They updated the Ophidian Iris that, you know, it had crit chance and ranks to Devouring Blaze, which was just not really beneficial to the amulet. So big shout out to Blizzard for taking on board that feedback and giving the amulet what it needs so it enters the game in a great state. Attack speed and ranks to Primordial Binding. This is just a really nice quality of change. Yes, they nerfed Serpentine's, like, the damage that it does per mana. It's kind of fair enough because it's crazy to do 2.5% damage per mana, and it's almost like busted strong. So I mean 1.5x damage per mana is still huge, so this build is absolutely going to shine. But yeah, stay tuned into this build guide. I want to talk through some of the variants that we can set up. There's so many ways we can play this, and depending on what gear you've got. For the real endgame, it's going to depend on what mythics you can get, but you don't need mythics to make this build shine. You'll be comfortably getting to Torment 4 just because of the damage if you get a good Ophidian Iris, a Serpentine aspect, a couple other pieces of gear, you are going to blast. So, guys, again, thanks for being here. Stay tuned. A lot more to crack into. Let's take a look at some of the setups. Taking a look over on Mobilytics, you will see I have a lot of variants for Hydra, and that's the reason I love this build. There is so much you can do with it because of how strong Hydra is with the Ophidian Iris and Serpentine aspect. But with the leveling build, the reason it cooks with absolute gas because you can just burn everything with your familiars and your Hydras, and you don't even need all the aspects. Most of the aspects are well dropped except for Incendiary, which only is to give you a little bit more mana regen, but everything else is just a well drop, and if you don't get it, it's okay. There are so many things that you can use along your journey, and the build is just strong enough because of how good Hydras, Familiar, and Firewall are for leveling. This is what I would say is best in slot. However, just want you to notice that Engulfing Flames is probably one of the best aspects you can get. You're probably better off to use that on, your amulet or one of your rings. I do put it on the weapon slot just because we get more value out of it. But if you're playing day one and you're leveling, you're not going to have the materials, you're not going to have the crafting resources, so don't waste time on imprinting onto a staff because you're just going to change it out every couple levels. As you can see in some of the gameplay before, I was just using like a rare staff and I was still absolutely destroying. But this is what I would say is best in slot. But it's such a fun build to play. So the reason I have my level 1 to 60 build is that we're not going to get our runes early, so the skill points are going to be quite different. We're probably only going to get like Sorcerers Meteorites as a rune, which is worth running for a little bit of extra damage. Now that the Nightmare dungeons can be ran for the seasonal quest, I'm hoping that we can gain access to our Horadrim spells before Torment 1. If we can, I've kind of put in here like some of the basic ones that we can use, like Bottled Wind for Barrier, Tranquil Stone, so we can actually get some Unstoppable, Reactive Ooze, so that we can get a little bit more resource gen. I do want to mention that one of the downsides of Serpentine is it is very mana intensive. So not only do you get like up to 1.5% extra damage per mana you have, but casting Hydra will consume all your mana, which means you're kind of left there with not much to do. About every 5 seconds you can cast a Hydra because we can only spawn 2. So most of these builders like, all right, what do I do in between? Like get mana, do I run around, do I evade? So this is what I love about the build diversity and why we get a lot of endgame setups. Because you can use almost any basic skill, a core skill, a mastery skill, whatever you want, you can make it like a hybrid Hydra build. So I have quite a few different endgame setups. I do really recommend Firewall Hydra. That's probably like the easiest gameplay. Also, Firewall gives you 25% extra damage to enemies that are burning within the firewall, so it's just quite nice to have. You'll see all of this through written here, so check that Mobilytics link in the guide. Just your basic gems to start off with until we get to like 60. 60, I recommend the Firewall Hydra setup. We're finally going to go to what I think is best in slot without any mythics. You're going to try to chase your like Tau Rashes, your Axial Conduit. Yes, for anyone that doesn't know, Axial Conduit doesn't do anything for damage because it's a Chain Lightning pair of pants, but the thing is it just has a maximum amount of mana, and if we get 1.5% damage per mana, or we get like 60 mana or something on these pants, it's just a lot of extra damage, so you can't beat it. Tybalt's Will are really good that you can put in place of it, but Axial Conduit will give you more damage, so yeah, just keep that in mind. That's the main two uniques. Down below, I've put any other uniques that you can find. Rakanauts are really good. If you get a great GA pair of them, Ragnarok's are really good best in slot boots, especially for the non-physical damage, cooldown reduction, as well as your resistance to all elements. Same as Yen's. If you get Yen's Blessing, they are a very good pair of boots and you can use. And this build is very diverse. You don't need to chase the perfect ancestral legendary boots with evade cooldown reduction or evade speed, and you're perfectly fine just to run a unique. So use what you find. The build is very strong. It's going to carry you anyways. Next, you're just going to want to get the Ophidian Iris. So once you farm that, once you get close to T1, you're pretty much good to go. Into the end game, right? There are so many variants that we can run. So I normally run what I think is probably my favorite version of Hydra, which is the Shaco and the Firewall. Now, once you spawn your Hydra every 5 seconds, you need to do something in interim. Whether it's casting Firewall, you can run the Ice Shards version with the Hail of Verglas. You can run Firebolt with Flame Weavers. You can do Fireball. So it doesn't matter. You could run Blizzard for all you want, or even Ball Lightning. I mean, it's not going to stack well because you're not going to be able to buff those skills, but they're going to be able to do something in between. So I've got a bunch of variants here, and they kind of all cross-pollinate, which is so cool. The only thing I do say is Serpentine is expensive on mana. So once you can solve the mana problem, which is very easy to do on Sorcerer, we have skills in our skill tree. We have amazing new Horadrim spells that can increase our resource generation. So do we get it from our Axial Conduit pants. It's very easy to solve, but every time you do cast a Hydra, you will completely drain out of mana. And so if you are using something that is mana intensive, Ring of Starless Skies is awesome. If you can solve the problem without it, you can put on whatever skill that you want. So let's have a look. We've got our Shaco and Firewall. The thing is, you don't need Battlecasters here. You could run Engulfing Flames. You could run Firestarter. You don't need Ring of Starless. The only mythic that is crucial to the endgame setup is the Shroud of False Death. So if you get your 2 sparks, I recommend get your Shroud of False Death. There's not a chest piece that's going to fit in a better slot just because of the amount of passives that we get from it. So keep an eye out for that. And then you look at your Firewall. My skill tree will vary depending on what build you want to run. I would go with Shaco and the Firewall. It's probably the easiest setup. I think just casting the Firewall, it's quite a large area. It's increasing the damage of your Hydras is quite nice. We swap around some of our enchantments between Firewall, Hydra, Firebolt, depending on the variant. I probably think the strongest pit pushing variant that we will see this season will be our Ice Shards version with the Ale of Verglas. So pretty much with my skill tree, all you're going to do is just take out one extra skill. Just drop out Shimmering Teleport, chuck that in there for Ice Shards. Build is pretty much the same. And instead of using your Shaco, which is going to be much harder to farm, the Hail of Verglas means that you can actually stack up to 100% extra damage, which is still more than the mythic helms that we can get. So what's so cool about that is you don't need Ring of Starless. You can put Engulfing Flames here. You can still run Battlecasters. You can use Sid Bindings, which is amazing because you can get more damage from your familiars, and you can get ranks to Primordial Binding. Now, Sid Binding is a really good pair of gloves to equip on almost any one of these builds. It's just going to help you with your ranks to Talrasha. Probably the only downside is when you do run defensive skills, maybe compared to running just pure conjurations, is that you won't be able to keep up your 3 stacks of Talrashas unless you're casting Ice Armor, then Familiar, and you're doing your little Familiar shenanigans to match the elements. So Sid Bindings will solve your Talrashas, which will pretty much give you a permanent stack to increase your damage. There are so many options that work with this build, and you want to find what works for you and works for your playstyle. Something fun I just want to play with is a Firebolt Shaco. It means I don't really need the Ring of Starless Skies because when I cast my Hydra, I won't need to worry about, using a core skill like Fireball or Ice Shards or even Firewall. So I'm just going to kind of play around with that with like a Flame Weaver variant. I still think the Ice Shard is going to be the best for pit pushing, just because you can stack extra damage. And then even Firebolt for an execute. Like, it just means you can put Fireball on, chuck in 3 points into the skill tree, make a few little changes, and you can just get free execute. Now, we already execute with our Horadrim spell for most of our other builds, so this kind of frees up a change that we can get. So if you look at most of my builds, when we use our Horadrim spells, we are using Cosmic Anomaly, and I'm equipping that with Hydra. You want to put the Smoldering Ember in. We get so much damage out of fire. That's why we don't actually temper onto our gear Hydras, because we want to buff the hell out of our spell. For our runes, to the end game, we run Mystical Frost Nova as well as Warcry, just the extra damage, and that kind of solves our crowd control that we can freeze more, and it frees up our points to put into like Hoarfrost, and it change our Ice Armor node over to the Mystical Ice Armor, so we get the extra 15% damage to frozen enemies. So there's a lot that changes depending on what build you want, but all are going to be viable. All are going to do T4 comfortably, and the reason being is Serpentine and the Ophidian Iris. Those two are the crux of the build, and it allows you for flexibility. So yeah, check out the build guide down in Mobalytics. Please, again, subscribe to the channel if you like it. Mercenaries, everything all varies. I'll briefly go through the Paragon, but I'm sure you can check it out below. But you go Tactician. We're going to go Torch to increase burning damage. We go up into our wonderful Burning Instinct, where we get Flame Feeder to increase damage. We go into our Enchantment Master. We use 2 enchantments of the same element. It kind of sucks not running Teleport Enchantment, but either way, we get a lot of damage. We want Pyromaniac because it's a pure fire pyromancy build. And then finally, we're going to pick up our Elemental Summoner for our conjurations, as well as put in Unleash just for the extra mana regen. But check out the build guide, it's all in there. I'm not going to rabbit on too long, but there are so many ways to play this build. I'm so looking forward to testing it. Keep an eye on the build guide. I will be updating in real time. I will test every single variant. But guys, if you made it to this point in the video, I appreciate you so much. Thanks for being here. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you on the season. I will be live on Twitch on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. The link down below is in Discord if you have any questions regarding one of those certain variants or what you have. But you can kind of choose between any of them. Like, if you have Sid Bindings and I don't use it here, it goes in that slot. That's fine. If you don't have a Ring of Starless, then you can use any other ring that I have in a different variant. For example, our Firebolt, Engulfing Flames. Perfect. So have fun, find your combination. Please let me know in the comments what you're going to try. I want to know what variant of Hydra you guys will be running this season, because I'm sure, like most of the community, Hydra is going to be the #1 played build because it is the absolute best already for Season 9. I look forward to seeing you all in Sanctuary. See you on the next one.